You're listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series that syndicates for the A-List Online. And my name is Andrew Mackay-Smith. The interview subject that I've got coming up for you, it's Christian Martucci. He's in two bands. He's in Stone Sour, of course the band that features one Corey Taylor of Slipknot, and Black Star Riders, the band that is the legacy act whose roots stretch right back to Thin Lizzy, of course, through the great Scotty Gorham, who we've also had on the podcast series. The reason for the chat with Christian is to talk up the brand new album from Black Star Riders. It's called Another State of Grace, and it'll be out in September 2019. So let's have a listen to what Christian has to say. Here we go. Hey Christian, Andrew Mackay-Smith calling for a chat. How you going?
Good, how you doing?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, it's a sprightly 6 a.m. and the sun is just about to come up over the horizon, as I can see there. A bit of cloud around, but I can't complain, mate. It's good to be alive for another day.
Heard that.
What have you been up to, mate? I guess this would be my first question for you. How do you balance everything? Because, I mean, you're in two very prominent bands there, so obviously at the moment we're here to talk about Black Star Riders and this brilliant album, Another State of Grace. But before we get into everything, mate, you probably live on a different continent to the other guys, mate. So I assume you do anyway, so correct me if I'm wrong, but how do you balance everything?
That's a really good question. Well, as far as Stone Sour is concerned, I mean, Corey is also in Slipknot, and, so that frees up everybody in Stone Sour's schedule to do other things while he's out there doing that, because it's a very long cycle. So Roy is playing in Hell Yeah now, and for me, Black Star Riders came up, and it was just the timing was perfect, and it was just way too good of a thing to pass up. I really wanted to do it.
Yeah. What's it like up there, mate? Do you sometimes pinch yourself when you're standing up there alongside Scotty Gorham? Because I think he's one of the great innovators of heavy metal and hard rock guitar.
I agree with you, and I think that every double guitar band that has come since Thin Lizzy owes an enormous debt of gratitude to him and all the other fantastic guys by his side throughout the years. If Scott wasn't such a nice, approachable person, I think it would probably be a lot more intimidating than it is. But because he is a really nice person, and he doesn't seem to have any ego about himself or any of that nonsense whatsoever, it feels oddly comfortable.
Yeah, and I agree with you totally. You're never sure. I had a chat to him about 3 weeks ago or so, and the bloke's a legend. We've got concert footage of him playing on these steps of the Sydney Opera House in front of about 100,000 people.
That's a great show.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
That's a great show.
Yeah.
I sure do, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
and then
fantastic.
You're talking to the guy, and if anybody's got a right to have an ego or be arrogant, it's him. But, mate, I've got to tell you, I've done over 450 interviews at this point, and he'd be inside my top 3 favourite interview subjects just from the fact that he's such a lovely fella. So it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I've spoken to people in bands that, to be honest with you, haven't done anything yet the impression is, like local bands, for example, where the impression they give you is that they're rock stars in waiting and that the world's just got to appreciate their genius, yet there is somebody who is a bit of a musical genius like Scotty, and he's just such a lovely guy, and mate, it's a pattern that repeats itself over and over again. So I wonder what that is.
I would say those bands have a a lot of learning to do, because it's just in my experience, and even the kind of the bigger personas that I've played with over the years or whatever, the people who really should have egos, like, the Scott Gorhams of the world and whatever, are oftentimes the nicest guys, and they don't have any of that, So it's kind of, there's definitely a lesson to be learned for that. I mean, if you're going to walk around acting like a jerk or whatever, you might get lucky for one or two albums. But in my experience, the people who have really stood the test of time, whether it be Scott Gorham or Alice Cooper or whoever it is, are genuinely very good, nice people.
Indeed, yeah. It's I think it's the only way to get through. I mean, you do take the hits along the way, don't you? But if you're generally a nice guy or girl, you're easy to get along with. You can surround yourself with people who are like-minded, and things are just a little bit easier. I mean, there are too many examples of people saying, "Oh, you got to be tough. You've got to be a prick. You've got to, don't let anybody step on you or tread on you or push you back." But it's like that's tiring. That attitude, that's far too tiring.
I think that's just life, isn't it?
Yeah,
it really is. I mean, nothing's handed to you. You got to work for everything, and music is definitely not for everybody. I mean, it's one letdown after another, but how you handle those letdowns kind of shows what type of person you are. If you become some bitter, angry person, you're not doing anybody any favors, and you're certainly not doing yourself any favors, because in this day and age, nobody wants to work with that. Nobody wants to sit on a tour bus with that, and I mean, nobody wants to live with that. So it's it is what it is. The guys that have lasted the longest that I've had the pleasure of meeting have always been the nicest ones.
There you go. Yep, there you go. Right there. So, mate, just with this album here, I genuinely think it's a contender for Album of the Year, Another State of Grace. When I was talking to Scotty, the first thing that I picked up, and this is a question for you as well, but, mate, the sound of this album is just unbelievable. In this day and age of metalcore and deathcore bands that compress the living daylights out of everything, so they're so complicated that you just can't pick up what's going on because it's so flat. It's cardboard flat, really, a lot of the sounds. But your music and the way you two play guitar, there's so much room to breathe, and you can wrap your head around it. It's a sort of album that you can put on in the morning. At the same time, it's a sort of album you can put on to help you go to sleep. I don't know what it is about it, man, but I do put a lot of that down to, great riffs, but the way it sounds as well. So how much of a hand did you have in the songwriting, but also the way the album sounds?
I would say quite a bit. I mean, everybody had their ideas, and when it was time to start writing the album, I was on tour with Stone Sour at the time. So, those guys would send me little ideas, like Scott would send me riffs, and, Ricky would send me, sometimes completed, sometimes half completed sort of songs. And, over that Stone Sour Aussie tour, I was in the dressing room, all day before we played with my little recording set up, and I was making demos, sort of putting the pieces together, trying to figure out, I've got this verse and this chorus, but Scott just sent me this awesome riff, so that'll be the intro and, the pre-chorus or whatever. So I really had a lot of great stuff to work with. And it was kind of an unconventional way of writing an album, but I mean, sometimes it's kind of cool like that too. It's like you have all the ideas laid out in front of you. Everybody contributed something, and sometimes it's good to just have one or two people sort of put it all together and see what comes out of it. And by the end of that tour, I had, I think, 17 demos, which was a combination of all of our ideas. And Ricky came to my house, and he sang on the demos. We sent them back to everybody. They were really excited about what they heard, and a few weeks later, we were in the studio.
There you go, yeah. I mean, it's what was the name of the last album, sorry, with the strong man on it? Because this is your first album with the band, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. The previous album is Heavy Fire.
That's the one.
Which is actually that's one of my that's up there with one of my favorite albums from the band out of those first three. And I was like, I remember when I listened to it the first time, knowing that I was going to be playing in the band, I'm like, man, how the hell do you improve this? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
You kind of can't. It's just they're just. I mean, for my personal taste, for my what I'm into and what I listen to, it doesn't really get much better than that for me. So I kind of just instead of being worried about like, oh man, I've got to replace Damon Johnson, who's a fantastic guitar player. I was more like, well, what can I do to put myself into this situation, you know?
Yeah.
And I did this, and it was a similar case with Stone Sour. You know, you don't want to get up there and be a carbon copy of what was there before. You know, you have to, you know, if you expect people to respect you, you got to be yourself, you know, for better or worse.
That's right. Yeah. No, you're not wrong there. But look, you play with Josh, obviously, in Stone Sour, and I had a chat to Josh about things. He seems like a very different character to Scott. So how do you balance those two personalities? Because if you know what I'm saying, I think Scott's the man in the middle of Black Star Riders, and Josh is the fella in the middle of Stone Sour. I know a lot of people think Corey is, but correct me if I'm wrong here. I don't think he is at all. I think it's Josh that's really driving that band there. So how do you work with both personalities? Do you find that you have to consciously adjust your approach when you're working with either of them?
You know, not necessarily. I mean, I think it's safe to say that Josh and I are just on completely different sides of the guitar spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's into he's into what he's into. I mean, you know, like the Joe Satriani's of the world, and you know, that kind of stuff. He also has a pretty broad musical taste, but his playing style more stems from that sort of world.
Yep.
So with Josh, there's never really like a battle of who's going to play what or anything like that. It's more like, okay, Josh does this and I do this, and then you put them together and it makes a really unique sound, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Scott, I feel because I actually, you know, grew up listening to classic rock, and you know, I would put Thin Lizzy pretty high, if not towards the top of that list.
Yep.
Like that playing style has been sort of embedded in my DNA. So with Scott, it's just kind of I don't know how to put it. It's almost like we're speaking to each other when we're playing guitar.
Oh yeah, no, I'm a musician, so I get. I understand exactly what you're saying. Actually, some people you lock in tight with, and you don't know why, but you just treasure that relationship so much, don't you? And it's so rare, though, isn't it? It's so rare when it happens.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
You know, you would never think that that a guitarist like Josh and a guitarist like me could be in the same band, but I mean, I think that's what makes that band unique. There's a little bit of everything in Stone Sour, you know, but with with Black Star Riders, it just, I don't know. I don't feel like I have to adapt to anything. It feels like putting on a really awesome leather jacket, you know?
I understand. Yeah. And look, you've been doing this a long time now, you know, and then there's a discography that's probably wrong, but it's still fairly comprehensive in that it shows there's been a lot of acts and artists that you've been involved with on Wikipedia. And it really, look, forgive me for saying this, but it's not really until, you know, from 1996, it's not really until you appear on something to do with Ronnie James Dio that I can see that you really start coming into the spotlight a little bit more. And then after that, you know, you've got these projects with Stone Sour and Black Star Riders. But from your own perspective, mate, I mean, you kind of alluded to it, I think, through the beginning of the conversation there, but you know, the music industry can be fairly difficult. You know, you do take a lot of hits. There's a lot of bad news as opposed to good news. But how have you kept the faith?
I just don't know what else. I don't know what else to do with myself. You know, it's you know, the guitars and all of that. To me, it's more than just you know, getting up on stage and showing off and stuff like that. Like, these things are legitimately my friends, and they've gotten me through every horrible thing that's happened. You know, I mean, prior to the Ronnie James Dio thing, I mean, you're talking about years of just really bad, terrible record deals. People in bands I was with just dying left and right. I
God,
kind of
yeah.
felt like I was the Grim Reaper for a minute.
Yeah, wow, yeah.
But just a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get to a certain point. But it's like, I think it's just all a matter of why you do it. And for me, it's always been a very therapeutic thing and an escape from the struggles of that kind of day-to-day life. So I never took it out on music when things weren't working out. I've definitely taken it out on a few people, but I would certainly never blame my guitar or music in general, because, you just got to know going into this that the music business part of it is very, it's a big letdown for a lot of people. But, if anything, I would say if you look at that Wikipedia thing, I'm kind of proof that if you just hang in there and you just believe in what you're doing, good things eventually do happen.
Agreed. Yeah, and it's looking at your age. They're about the same age as me, mate. Yeah, I mean, it's what do they say? It's like that 25-year overnight sensation. You know what I mean? Like, people don't realise
Yeah.
to people that it might have appeared that you came from the left field somewhere, up in the stadium stand somewhere before you joined Stone Sour, but not really, mate. You've obviously been working a lot. You've built up a reputation based on being a nice fella too, in all of the bands that you've been in. So when the opportunity was presented to apply, or whether or not they just reached out to you because they'd heard that you were a good bloke and talking about in Stone Sour there, but you were ready to take the opportunity. You never gave up hope that eventually you were going to be in a band. Right, you go.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just thinking, because I watched a Pantera documentary the other night or whatever, and I think it was the Behind the Music thing, and they were talking about when they released Cowboys from Hell, and they were interviewing Benny Paul, and they were like, Pantera overnight sensation or whatever, and he was like, overnight sensation? We've been slugging it out in all these bars and clubs for 12 years or whatever before that album came out. So it's pretty funny, but I mean, the bottom line is everything that you do, good and bad, in music makes you who you are. And honestly, I think you need a little bit of that toughening up if you're going to be a musician. You need to have these things happen, because, I've known people that their very first band was successful, and, it's like they don't have the same type of appreciation for that as somebody who really had to slug it out and work hard to get where they were at,
Yeah, I get it completely. Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, yeah. But I know there's the other fella that you and you probably know him, but Jason Christopher, the bass player in Prong, and also yeah, you guys are fairly similar in that you sort of were on the periphery for a long time, but you're starting to come into the spotlight now. Have you guys ever worked together?
Yeah, Jason and I have been friends for about 20 years now, maybe longer, and we've played in probably 4 bands together over the years, so we go back a long way.
He's a good bassist, actually. I was watching him with Tommy and Prong a few years ago here in Brisbane, and mate, he locks that stuff right down, a bit like Tony Campos does as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I've seen Prong several times over the years, and I always thought they were awesome. But I got to say, the best Prong show I ever saw was with Jason on bass and Bart Cruz on drums, who's now in Lamb of God. But that was a great lineup.
Oh, is that right? There you go. I didn't put the two together, right? Because that was the bass player in the band when I watched them. And I'm an old Prong fan, you see, from Cleansing right back to Beg to Differ. And so, of course, it's really, it's a bit of a, when I say Tommy solo show, and it's a bit like the Dave Mustaine thing, Megadeth thing is the Dave Mustaine solo show. You just have a cast of the willing around you, the cast of people that sort of help you get the job done. But man, that's a big step up for Art, isn't it? Going into that band there, and Chris Adler. God, I wonder what he's going to do next, because he's a tremendous drummer.
I'm sure he'll be fine. Yeah, but But yeah, I think Art's just one of those guys that from when I've seen him play and stuff. I mean, he's an undeniable talent. I mean, it's only a matter of time before somebody like that gets snatched up.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, no, agree. Mate, that's
good for him and good for Lamb of God.
Yeah, look, I wasn't sure what was going on there for a while because, of course, Chris was, he did that thing with the guy from Nitro. I can't remember the name of the band there, but and Michelangelo Badio, and he also did the Megadeth thing. So I think the writing had been on the wall for a little bit that maybe there were, I don't know anything here. I'm just sort of postulating, but musical differences, or maybe they just had enough of each other or what have you. But I was actually, I tell you what, between you and I, and God, if it's cool with you, I'm planning on releasing this as a podcast episode because there's so much cool stuff here. But I was hoping you'd step into Metallica, to be honest with you, because I can't get into Metallica these days due to Lars's drumming. It's just, I'm a musician to say as well, but mate, I can't listen to it. I listen to it and it's like, I don't know, it's just so weird at this point in time that I feel like he's going back, he's regressing on album and definitely live.
Well, you know what it is? There was a time when we were younger in the 80s, or if you even hinted that Lars wasn't,
yes.
If you had said something like that about Lars, you would have gotten the crap beat out of you by like
I remember those days,
with a mustache and denim jacket in your high school or whatever. I just think that the bottom line is that guy created some of the most memorable drum lines ever. And I mean, he played on Master of Puppets. It's like whatever he does after that is almost, I almost don't even care. But like, even when, like when One came out, I remember walking down the street and it was back when there were a lot of people that were playing music and stuff. And you'd hear out of garages, every kid trying to do the, you know what I mean, on the drum. And, I mean, there are people who think that, Ace Frehley isn't a good guitar player, but it's like, well, you go and try to write the solo for, Detroit Rock City or something.
Yeah.
You can't.
I think
that over the years, metal has gotten so technical and so over the top that, maybe compared to where things have progressed, he might not be technically in the same ballpark as a lot of these other guys. And a lot of them are very fantastic drummers, but where's the songs at? Where's the memorable drum parts,
Yeah.
So that's kind of my take on it. I haven't seen
play.
Metallica live since the Black Album. I haven't seen them live, but I certainly at the time I didn't think there was anything wrong.
No, it just seems just that last album, Death. Is it Death? No, not Death Magnetic. God, what was it? Hardwired to Self-Destruct. There you go.
Hardwired. Yeah.
Yeah, just the drum sound is far too high in the mix. Like, what's going on. You listen to it and think, oh God, here we go. It's way too high in the mix, and the drum patterns are overly simplistic. And I guess that's the detail in my comment there. And I listened to that one and I remember thinking to myself, Lars should step out and become an executive producer and Chris Adler should come in and play drums and give it that urgency, because I think that James's guitar playing misses the urgency that Lars, to your exact point, used to have circa Master of Puppets. I think after that he started to become more of a blues and boogie drummer, not a metal drummer, even though he's playing in the world's biggest metal band. It was that shift that they did on Load, and I still struggle to make sense of it. I'm not a hater, believe me. I'm trying to provide valuable or constructive feedback here for the band, and I've done like big articles about it and all the rest of it, blog entries, that sort of thing. But I've just
there's just some people that I just think there's some drummers that just kind of have like this signature sound. Whether it be, Lars or Dave Lombardo or somebody like that, where it has this feel where it's like almost going to go off the rails a little bit, but it never does, kind of.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think to me, that's exciting. I mean, it could be because I come from more of a sort of punk rock background in my earlier years or whatever. So like kind of like Filthy Animal Taylor from Motorhead. You know, technically, I mean, you know, you couldn't really put him in the same category as like a Chris Adler or one of these, you know, powerhouse drummers, but you know it's him when you hear it. You know, I think that's kind of cool. That's a very tough instrument to put your stamp on.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, no, it is. Yeah, but I mean, look, you've played with some tremendous drummers. I mean, Roy's an excellent drummer, isn't he? You know, he's one of those guys. That, I mean, I remember first time I heard him was probably, and most of us did, was back on the first Soulfly album, and he locked that one down beautifully. And all of the stuff that he's done since, man, it's no surprise at all to see him go from strength to strength. So you must rate his playing tremendously, being up there in front of him.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've known Roy since the mid-'90s, way before Soulfly or any of that stuff. And, I mean, you know, he was in, he came from punk bands too. You know, he was in Nausea and, you know, just an incredible drummer. And I mean, when you go to like these punk rock shows or whatever, and, you know, you see these bands play or whatever, I remember the first time I saw Roy get behind a drum kit, like it literally shook the entire place. I mean, he's a combination of every single one of my favorite drummers rolled into one. He is just a phenomenal musician, and he plays everything, not just drums. He can play all kinds of crazy, weird instruments.
God, yeah, he's one of them, is he? One of those multi-talented guys. Yeah, know the type.
Yeah, he can just pick up something and figure it out. Really interesting.
Mate, this has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much. It's so great to talk to a fella who's had to stick it out, take the hits. But mate, you've come good. Hydrograb is a brilliant album, and of course this one here, Another State of Grace, man. Man, you know, I've asked this once before, but you must be pinching yourself at this point. You're in two of the greatest rock bands. I mean, either way, if you're a rock fan, both of these bands are up the top somewhere, mate. So you must be pinching yourself that you're here now after all of these years.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a lot more than I expected. You know, I just figured, you know, I would have been happy, you know, even just doing like a mid-level thing as a quote unquote career. You know, I never would have in a million years imagined that, you know, I'd be able to play in a band with, you know, Scott Gorham from Thin Lizzy, or have, you know, such a successful album like Hydrograd. Or be asked to play on the Altitudes and Attitudes thing with David Ellison and Frank Bello. You know,
that's
that was
right.
A huge honor.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
to be a part of.
Yeah. I mean, I've spoken to both of those two guys, and they're all of these guys that you mentioned. You know, it's so true what we said at the beginning. They're just lovely guys, David and Frank. You know, just good dudes, aren't they? And I only speak to them for 20 minutes, like I speak to yourself, but you just get that vibe. You know when someone's a nice guy or not. You know, and you just get that vibe that, like yourself, man, they're just fans of music and they just love being up there playing in front of people. And that's what I love about rock and roll and heavy metal, mate, is that it's music that is played by people that aren't too different to the fans. There's not a lot of arrogance and pretense associated with this music.
Well, I mean, if you get into it because you want to be a rock star and you want girls and, you know, whatever your thing is, you know what I mean?
Yep.
You're going to be disappointed, you know? But for somebody like, you know, for somebody like me, anytime something good happens, I don't expect it. I'm shocked by it. I think it's incredible. I'm just like, whoa, this is awesome. This is a break from the usual crap I have to put up with, you know?
Indeed.
You know, whether it be joining Stone Sour or whatever it is, you know, it's just kind of, you know, life is continues to be full of surprises for me.
Well, mate, you've worked hard and you've got the talent. It must be said, you've worked hard, but you've got the talent. You're a bloody good bloke too. So, mate, good luck with everything. And, you know, I just hope you go from strength to strength. And it's so nice to chat to somebody who appreciates this station in life after so much hard work. There's none of that resentment or bitterness. You've made it. You're doing it. You're talking to little old me here in Australia, mate, from where you are in the United States there. You're touring the world, man. So you kept the faith, man, and good luck to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Nice talking to you.
Likewise, mate. No worries at all. Okay.
All right.
Cheers.
Take care.
You too, mate. Okay, bye. You've been listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series that syndicates for the A-List Online, and my name is Andrew Mackay-Smith. That interview's subject was Christian Martucci from the Black Star Riders and Stone Sour. Thanks so much for listening.